In the early morning hours on March 26, 2015, an arsonist struck the Gerald Wayne Interactive Zoological Foundation. We're offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and the conviction of either this suspect or the people that were involved in the arson fire on March the 26th.
Joe blamed me for starting the fire. He blamed Carole Baskin for starting the fire. He blamed everybody but himself. And in the end, the FBI finally decided that they thought he had actually done it himself because he didn't want all of this video to get out. Charlie, there was a lot of video in there that made him look very, very bad. And I'll tell you a quick story of one of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special two-part edition of Charlie Goldberg Live, featuring such an inspirational man with an even crazier life story. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys might know him from Netflix's hit documentary series, The Tiger King, or you might know him for wrestling alligators, jumping out of planes, swimming with sharks, doing all kinds of crazy stuff because he was once TV's adventure man. My friends, it is my honor to bring to you a two-week event with Mr. Rick Kirkham. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Charlie Goldberg Live. Thank you so much, Rick Kirkham, for being on the show. What an honor to have you here.
Oh, Charlie, it's good to join you. Really, really exciting.
Man, a Tiger King himself in Rick Kirkham. Such an honor once again. Rick, you got to tell me, you were on the hit show Tiger King, obviously. Talk to me about your experience on the show. What was it like being with Joe Exotic?
Well, it began about 5 years ago. I took a job to go up and shoot a reality TV show at Joe Exotic's zoo. He had a little zoo off the side of the highway in Oklahoma, the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. And I went up and I talked to the guy, and he said, "Well, hi, how the hell are you?" And I'm doing great. He said, "Hey, I want to hire you. You're famous, and I want you to make a reality show." So I moved into the zoo that night, and I lived in the zoo for almost a year making a reality show. And let me tell you, it was the craziest year of my life.
Yeah, and fans like me have had the honor to see some of it at least unfold on Netflix, but I'm sure you've had way more crazier stories to tell from the show than we have seen on video. So talk to me, definitely. And talk to me about your experience, because I know Carole Baskin had a huge issue with Joe. What were your thoughts on that whole situation with Carole? Do you think that Carole actually killed her husband?
Well, actually, yeah, I do believe Carole killed her husband, Don. A rich guy like that, a multimillionaire, doesn't disappear without his money. That just doesn't happen. So something bad happened to him, and yeah, I tend to believe Carole was behind it. But you asked about what went on with Joe and Carole. Joe ran this little roadside zoo, and Carole runs a little roadside zoo down in Tampa, Florida. And they were always going at each other online. He would try to tell her to go to hell, and she would try to tell him, "I'm going to close you down." And it was basically a competitive rift. They both were doing the same thing. They were raising tigers. They were putting tigers out for money, for people to get to hold and get a picture with. They were both trying to make money off wild animals, and they both hated each other, and they wanted to try to close the other one down. And it became a feud that became almost famous in itself.
And almost famous is an understatement. I think it's very famous at this point. Definitely. And with Carole Baskin, so she had this zoo called Big Cat Rescue. And with Big Cat Rescue, Carole tried to, quote unquote, rescue cats. But Joe claimed that she really didn't rescue cats, that in fact, that she was doing really the same thing that Joe did. How do you feel about that situation? Do you feel somebody was right? Somebody was in the wrong?
You know, the funny thing, Charlie, is that they both were right in what they were saying. Joe attacked Carole for to claiming that she was rescuing animals, when in fact Carole was really doing the exact same thing. She was taking in cats so that other people would come in and pay money to see these animals. She was claiming that Joe was breeding animals and breeding them just so he could have baby tigers so people could hold them and he could make money. And she was right. So they were both right in their accusations against each other, but they both denied when it came to themselves. So it was really kind of a quandary. There was this battle going on, but nobody was in the wrong. They were both wrong.
Of course, they were definitely both not perfect in that situation.
Exactly.
And watching the show unfold, us fans got to see that you, Rick, were really a reality TV producer for Joe Exotic. And while producing his show, you sadly had all this footage and it just got burned down one day. All of it was lost. Talk to me about that experience, what you were feeling.
You know, Charlie, we had been shooting the reality show for nearly a year. And like I say, I lived in the zoo. I mean, every morning I woke up to the sound of tigers and lions roaring and the smell of wild monkeys. And, you know, that was just a lifestyle. I did it for a year. So I had a lot of video. I had thousands of hours of video of everything Joe Exotic did, from baby tigers being born to tourists coming in and riding the camel, you know, all kinds of crazy things that went on in the zoo. And believe me, working with Joe every day was a crazy day. But about just before I left the zoo in March of that year, 2015, the studio burned down and we lost all of the footage that we had created just as we were about to have this reality show go to air. And of course, it broke my heart because my life's work with I put a year in there. You know, it's painful to lose all this footage. But you know, Joe blamed me for starting the fire. He blamed Carole Baskin for starting the fire. He blamed everybody but himself. And in the end, the FBI finally decided that they thought he had actually done it himself because he didn't want all of this video to get out. Charlie, there was a lot of video in there that made him look very, very bad. And I'll tell you a quick story of one of them, just to let you know the kind of guy Joe was. One day, this lady came into the zoo with a horse trailer, and she had a horse. And she got out of the car and she was crying and telling Joe she couldn't take care of this horse anymore. Would he help her and put this horse out to pasture and let the horse live a good life? And Joe put his arms around her and started crying with her and said, "Sure, I will. I'll take care of your horse. Just leave your trailer here. We'll get it back to you tomorrow, and we'll take care of your beautiful horse until his days are gone." And she was so happy, and she left the zoo. Well, before she even got out of the zoo, Joe turned around and said, "Rick, get your camera. Come with me." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." He said, "Are you rolling?" I said, "Yeah." He pulled his gun out, put it up to the horse's head, shot the horse dead right there in the trailer, and then laughed and talked about, "I'm no charity case. I don't take care of people's animals for free." That's the kind of guy Joe Exotic was.
Man, it seems like everybody in the zoo industry has a little bit of a dark side to them.
It's a strange set of people. You know, you have different types of people. You have what we call the monkey people, and they're all people who own monkeys at home. And of course, Joe owned about 25, 30 different monkeys. You have the tiger people, and they're very macho type people. You know, monkey people are kind of crazy. Tiger people are kind of macho, and look what I got. I got a bigger cat than you. But you have all these different kinds of people in one arena inside a zoo, and it made for crazy TV.
So I have a quick question. I was thinking about this after watching the series. So all of your footage burned down, right? It all burned down. How did they capture all that footage of Joe and you and the entire series if it all burned down?
Well, when I first went there to do the reality show, Joe actually had his own little internet TV show 5 days a week. And that was the agreement, is I would take over and produce this little internet TV show for about 100 people. And that's all we had watching it. And I told him, "I'll do that for you." Well, we would upload that to YouTube every night. So the footage that Netflix used came from the YouTube uploads that we had done over the year that I've been there.
Oh, wow. So even all of that just it just came into the YouTube interviewing Joe behind the scenes, interviewing his husbands, obviously. That was all a part of the YouTube show. So that question is answered.
Pretty much 90% of the footage that Netflix used was off of our YouTube footage.
That's absolutely incredible. And the YouTube show is very controversial for Joe. I had to say the least. I've seen him shooting sex dolls, saying that they were Carole Baskin. I've seen him, like you said before, telling Carole to go to hell. A very controversial show. When Joe was shooting it, did you enjoy it? Did you thought it made for good entertainment, or were you just worried for him?
Well, we were dying laughing back behind the cameras while we made the little internet show every night. We were laughing our asses off. I mean, Joe would do anything. Like you said, he would pull out his gun and shoot the head right, and the bullet would go right through the studio wall. But he'd shoot the head off of a rubber doll, a plastic doll, and they called it Carole. He would always have segments where he had some of the animals he brought in on set, and we get to hold and play with the tigers and the snakes and the crocodiles. So we had a blast. We loved making the show. But Joe, he had a public facade and he had a private personality. His public facade, he was a very friendly, fun, crazy guy. Privately, he was a very mean and hateful guy, and he was not very nice to people at all.
I'm sure. And as we fans watch the series unfold, we got to see Joe's true side, I'd say, come out to life. And obviously, Joe did have a different side to the public, like you mentioned. In fact, he ran for president of the United States, believe it or not, as well as governor of Oklahoma. So talk to me about that. How did the campaign go? Did everyone just say behind Joe's back, yeah, there's no way he's winning?
It was a publicity stunt.
Definitely, I'm sure. And also, Joe was very controversial, including the time, when he was on the run from the police. So he said that he was in Belize with his future husband while on the run. On Instagram, he was trying to say, oh, I'm on the beaches of Belize, no one could find me. But he was really in Florida. So did you see that post and you were like, man, that's bull crap. He's obviously in Florida.
Charlie, everything that Joe put up was a lie. Everything he put online was a lie. Every story he told was a lie. Joe is a pathological liar. So when I heard about the Belize trip, I knew that was a lie. Everything he said that came out of his mouth was untruthful. But he was the kind of guy, he would tell you what you wanted to hear or tell you what you needed to hear, not tell you what was the truth.
I'm sure. And outside of Joe on the show, there was a lot of other characters, and they seemed like really decent people outside of Joe. Do you have any friends on the show that you still are in contact with? Who was your favorite?
Well, there were two sets of people at the zoo. There were the TV people, the studio crew that worked for me. There was about 6 of us in the studio. And then you had about 10 animal trainers. The animal trainers were all former drug addicts, former alcoholics, runaways. It was a really lower class of person than the people in the studio who'd all been to college and were studying broadcasting. So we really didn't associate that much with each other. But I have stayed in contact with the studio crew that I had there. They were young kids, around 20, 22, and they were learning the business from me. I was teaching them what I'd learned over the years when I was a reporter. So I still stay in contact with them. And of course, they're as blown away by the Netflix series as Tiger King as I am. We're all blown away by it. It really told the truth.
And I'm sure everyone was blown away by Tiger King. And you got to tell me, so after Tiger King was released on Netflix, I'm sure a lot of people came into contact with you and told you about their thoughts on the show. And man, I never knew that you were a part of this. What was that like? How did your publicity go up after the show was released?
Charlie, it's still going on now. And next month marks a year since Tiger King came out. I've done over 100 TV and radio and newspaper interviews since the last year. Over 100. I've been on Swedish TV, Norwegian TV, German TV, American TV, Japanese TV. It blew up. Everybody wanted to talk to Rick. And so I believe me, I've been flown all over the world for interviews. I've done more interviews on Zoom and Skype and Gmail than you can imagine. But it's still going on because people are still tuning in and watching Tiger King for the first time. So I get probably 50 friend requests a day on Facebook just from people who watch Tiger King. And I'm probably doing about 3 interviews a week still a year later.
Wow, that's incredible. And obviously, I just started watching Tiger King a month ago and finished I'd say about 2 weeks ago. And I was once again blown away by the series. So moving on from the Tiger King subject, you were a reporter for Inside Edition. You were quote unquote the adventure man, where you really did everything that's crazy in the world. You were wrestling alligators, you were jumping out of airplanes, you were racing with NASCAR racers. What was your craziest experience, and were you actually nervous going into any of the things you did?
You know, the whole Inside Adventure segment on Inside Edition, it was designed to kind of put me in the position as an average guy who wasn't an athlete, trying to go out and do these crazy adventurous things. I ran with the bulls in Spain. I got stomped on. Every time I did something, I got hurt. I got shot out of the world's largest circus cannon one time, and I got hurt. Yeah, you know, I jumped out of airplanes. I swam with sharks. It was a lot of fun for me. I enjoyed the hell out of it, but I always got hurt, and I made it look funny. You know, like, look, I got hurt again. Here I am in the hospital again. I broke this bone. Ha ha ha. You know, people love seeing the average guy go out and do all these crazy things.
And did you have any butterflies in your stomach going into any of the stunts? Were you just really an adrenaline junkie?
Every one of them, I had butterflies. I was scared of, on every time I went out, I was scared to do it. But when the camera started rolling, all of a sudden I got courage and I went ahead and I did it. You know, it started with bungee jumping way back before you were born. We did bungee jumping. And that led to fighting Chuck Norris. I actually fought a black belt karate chimpanzee one time. The little chimpanzee's about this tall, and he kicked my ass.
And let's just hope you were not monkeying around with that.
A good one.
I'm here all year, folks. I'm here all year. Really, you had a really, really, really rough past. And in fact, there's a movie about you. It's called TV Junkie. It's a great movie. I saw it on Amazon Prime Video. And it was about your past, and you had an addiction to crack and drugs and really substances. And with that, it really turned your life around in, I'd say, a 360 rotation, time after time after time again. And obviously, it's been tough, but you've overcame it, thankfully. And I am so honored to speak to you about that on the next edition of Charlie Goldberg Live next week.
We got tigers.